Hey guys, it's Abby and today I'm giving you another drawing video on my Note 10 Plus. This time I'm going to be using Artflow for drawings. For the last couple of videos I've done, I was using Corel Paint. And this time I'm going to be switching over to Artflow. Artflow is a much better drawing program. I didn't realize how much better it was until I started using it. It's got all the same tools that you expect to find on, let's say, Clip Studio Paint or Photoshop. So it's a really good, solid all-around drawing tool. Now, one of the things I didn't realize is that the native time-lapse recording tool that I use within Artflow doesn't record any of the menu options, the layer options, the brush settings that I was using. So unfortunately, you're not going to see any of that in this video. So what I've done is included a couple of screenshots of when I'm using different brushes or adjusting certain things. So right here, instead of using the pencil brush tool that's inside the app, I'm using the rectangular pen tool instead. And the reason why is that I like the look and feel of this particular brush. It reminds me a lot like the soft round opacity brushes that's in Photoshop. It's a great brush to use for sketching. The pencil tools in Artflow are okay, they're not bad. I just personally prefer, when I'm doing digital drawings, I prefer using this type of brush. So unfortunately you can't see it right now, but what I'm doing is that I'm started a new layer underneath my original drawing layer, and I'm applying just a flat gray color across all of my flesh tones. And the reason why I'm doing this is that I've decided to do this drawing entirely in grayscale first in terms of the digital painting, and then apply some colors on top of it later. The reason why you want to do something like this is that once you work in grayscale, you just focus on the values of your drawing. So you can just focus on the lighting, just focus on the shapes, just focus on the shading. Make sure you're getting everything right on that level first before you start going into color. It's a great way of working. It kind of actually speeds up the work process, even though you're separating the two processes. It's just you're not second guessing yourself as much if you just do your grayscales first. So that's what I decided to do here. In order to do that, I want to make sure that I have gray at every part of my flesh tone area. If I were to start doing this working entirely off of, let's say, a white background, what's going to happen is that I'm going to leave some areas that's a little too light. So when I do apply colors to it later, and I'll show you that process, that color, it's not really going to take hold. It really needs some sort of grayscale information for the colors to latch onto. So I want to make sure that I'm starting off with sort of a light gray background first, and then slowly work my way from there. So when I'm doing the shading work on the flesh tone areas, what's happening is that I'm switching back and forth between the rectangular pen brush that I've been using for the sketching layer and the round brush full that's under the paint options under Artflow. switching back and forth to these two brushes allows me to get sort of that painterly style that I need, while still making sure I have a lot of contrast with my shading. At this point, I've been using the smudge tool in Artflow to do my blending between the brushstrokes that I've been making, just trying to soften up some certain areas near the lips, around her cheeks, just below her eyes. I just want to make sure that sort of have a smooth transition for the skin tones. I still want to keep my contrast, so I'm being very careful not to overly blend certain areas. You'll see right below her chin, right above her eyes, I have some significant shadows there, and I still want to keep that contrast of those shadows. I still want to keep the lines of those shadows. When I'm using my smudge tool, I'm only really want to blend sort of the softer areas of the face and still keep the harsh contrast of the shadows. Now I've switched over back to my rectangular pen tool. I've created a new layer on top of my original drawing layer, and using pure white, I'm starting to add some highlights to the eyes, highlights to the mask, and a few highlights around the nose. I find like doing these very stark highlights on a drawing really brings it to life, especially around the eyes. You really get a sense of there's a personality, there's a person looking back at you. In terms of the shiny leather texture, it does wonders, adding some really harsh highlights to it. It really sells the idea of the texture of that outfit. At this point, I'm ready to actually add color to my drawing. Now, the way I go about doing this in Artflow is that I'll create 3 new layers on top of my original drawing layer. The first layer, I'm going to set its blending mode over to overlay. The second layer, I'm going to set that blending mode to color burn. And then the third topmost layer, I'm going to set that one to color dodge. So on the first layer, the color overlay layer, I'm just going to pick sort of a flat flesh tone color and then just use that. And once I'll use a completely opaque brush. I think in this case I used the rectangular pen tool again. I use that to fill out the flesh tone areas. And then on the color burn layer, that's where I'm going to use sort of a reddish color, purplish color in this particular case, and apply that. Now what the color burn does is that not only does it apply the color to your original layer, but it also adds sort of a darker color to it. So your original color that you selected, it'll just burn just a little bit darker on your original layer. And then the color dodge does the complete opposite. So that one I use sort of a lighter yellow color, something a little bit closer to white, and that adds sort of softer highlight colors to your original drawings. So once I get this to a place that I really like, so I think I'm pretty close here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge everything into one layer. So that's the original grayscale layer, the overlay layer, the color burn layer, and the color dodge layer. I'll merge all of that down to one layer. And the reason why is that I'm only using those colors just to sort of get a starting point to work with my colors. I have my values now. The values look great. I have some basic colors applied to it. Now I can really go in there and with all those layers merged together, I can just work off of this one layer and really clean things up. So I can add some more details to the eyes. I can clean up sort of that eyelid area. I can go in and add some more harsher colors to it. So like the green here, for example, in the eyes. It gives me a lot of freedom to go in there and manipulate what I've done so far, and separating those two processes to begin with allow me to get to this step a lot more quickly than I normally would have. So here I started experimenting with some of the effect brushes that Artflow has. I was using a lot of the halftone brushes on this particular drawing. I've never used them before, so you'll see me experimenting with how they work, deleting some of them, erasing some of them, going back and trying to reuse them and trying to understand how I can use them in this particular illustration. I have a lot of fun when I'm using new drawing programs just to see what kind of different brushes and different effects that they have. I find that no program has all the best brushes. Most programs have one or two brushes that they really excel at, and I like playing around with those and discovering what those ones are. Since I added a pink background to this illustration, I want to bring those pinks back into the figure of the drawing. So here you can see me using that halftone brush and trying to bring some of those pink colors onto the leather. Because objects, they take on the colors that's reflected around them. So if you're in a completely pink room, you'll notice that some of those pink colors are highlighted across maybe your glasses, or you'll see a little bit in your flesh tone, in your hair. So it's always a good idea when you're doing any sort of painting or digital painting is to make sure that the colors that you have inside in your drawing is bouncing off of each other. It really sells the idea they're in the same space. Unfortunately, one of the steps that you're not going to be able to see here, but you're going to see all of a sudden really affect the drawing, is the fact that I adjusted the colors of my drawings. Now this is a feature that you can find in Photoshop and in most other drawing programs. I was really surprised to see it in Artflow. Most mobile drawing programs doesn't allow you to do things like hue, saturation, color adjustments, even though a lot of photography apps let you do that. Most drawing apps don't include that. Artflow does. It's hidden in the menu options. But it's something that I always like doing. As I'm painting and applying color to my drawings, I'm never always super happy with it. Something I'm trying to get better at is better color selection. But I usually find that near the end of my drawings, I'll use that hue saturation, those color balance tools, adjust the colors, really make them pop a little bit more than what I originally put down, and that helps a lot. The curves, if you can play with your curves at the end of the drawings, it's amazing how much life it can add to your drawing just by adding a lot more contrast between your highlights and your shadows. And that was drawing on my Samsung Note 10 Plus in Artflow. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to see more videos like this, please hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, go ahead, hit that like button. If there's anything that you feel is missing, and I understand that because you can't see the menus or the brush tools or anything like that, there's probably a lot of questions you guys have. Feel free to leave a comment or a question at the comment section below and be happy to answer it for you. But until next time, stay out of trouble.